Right now, as you're watching this video, the clock is ticking. The United States has handed Iran a peace proposal, and Iran has until today to respond. If they say yes, the most dangerous war in decades could finally be over. If they say no, or say nothing at all, US bombs could start falling again, at a higher level and intensity than anything we've seen so far. Those are Trump's exact words. The Strait of Hormuz, the narrow strip of water that controls 20% of the world's oil supply, is still a war zone. Sporadic clashes are happening right now between US and Iranian naval forces as I record this. So, in the next 12 minutes, I'm going to break down everything you need to know. How did we get here? What's actually in this peace deal? And what happens to you, your gas prices, your economy, your world, depending on what Iran decides today? Stay with me, because this is one of those moments that changes everything. To understand what's happening today, we need to go back, not years, but just a few months. On February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel launched a surprise joint military operation codenamed Operation Epic Fury. The strikes hit Iranian military bases, government buildings, and nuclear facilities. And in the opening minutes of the attack, within half a minute, 3 separate gatherings of Iranian regime officials were struck simultaneously. Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, the man who had ruled Iran with an iron fist for over 3 decades, was assassinated. The world woke up to a completely different Middle East. Now, why did the US do this? The Trump administration gave several explanations: to prevent an imminent Iranian nuclear threat, to stop Iran from retaliating against Israel, and to destroy Iran's missile capabilities before they became unstoppable. But here's what made this so shocking. These strikes happened during active nuclear negotiations between the US and Iran. Diplomats were at the table one day, and bombs were falling the next. Iran's response was immediate and massive. They launched hundreds of drones and ballistic missiles at Israel, at US military bases across the region, and at American allied Arab countries: Bahrain, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the UAE, and more. And then Iran made one move that sent shockwaves through the entire global economy. They closed the Strait of Hormuz. That's the narrow bottleneck between Iran and Oman, only about 21 miles wide at its narrowest point, through which 1/5 of the world's oil and gas supply passes every single day. Overnight, oil prices spiked. Gas prices in the US shot up to $4.50 a gallon on average. And in countries more dependent on Middle Eastern oil, people were paying the equivalent of $7, $8, even $9 a gallon. The war didn't just affect soldiers and missiles. It hit every single person on the planet at the gas pump. So, what's happened since then? Let me hit the biggest moments fast. The civilian cost. This war has been devastating for ordinary Iranians. The Iranian Red Crescent reported that 65 schools and 32 medical facilities have been targeted since the war began. Over 10,000 civilian sites damaged, entire neighborhoods leveled, and some estimates suggest at least 15% of casualties are children under 18. A UNESCO World Heritage Site, the Golestan Palace in Tehran, a 400-year-old royal complex, was damaged by airstrike debris. UNESCO called it a violation of international law. The naval war. While the air campaign grabbed headlines, the real battle shifted to the water. The US launched a naval blockade of Iranian ports, seizing Iranian vessels and ordering dozens more to turn back. US officials say American forces have severely damaged Iran's naval capabilities in the Gulf of Oman. Multiple warships destroyed, key bases hit. Iran's military called it piracy. The US called it enforcement. Project Freedom. Trump launched an operation to use US military assets to escort commercial ships through the Strait of Hormuz, keeping global trade alive while the war raged. Multiple countries quietly signed on to support it. Just 48 hours after announcing Project Freedom, Trump suspended it. saying there was great progress in peace talks. Iran's state media celebrated, calling it Trump backs down. Trump saw it differently. He said it was a strategic pause. He warned that if a deal wasn't reached, the U.S. would resume bombing at, quote, a much higher level and intensity. Then came this week. U.S. forces targeted an Iranian oil tanker near Keshem Island. Iran retaliated, firing on 3 U.S. Navy destroyers in the Strait of Hormuz. Explosions were heard in port cities. 3 destroyers transited under fire. Trump posted on Truth Social, "We blew them away." But both sides, publicly at least, said the ceasefire was still in effect. How can a ceasefire involve naval battles? That's the insane tightrope both sides are walking right now. So let's talk about this deal, because this is the whole reason today matters so much. According to sources briefed on the negotiations, reported by Axios, the U.S. and Iran are working on a 1-page, 14-point memorandum of understanding, a framework document to end the war. It's being negotiated by Trump's envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, both directly with Iranian officials and through intermediaries. Here's what the deal reportedly includes. For Iran commits to a moratorium on nuclear enrichment. No more spinning centrifuges, no progress toward a bomb. Iran agrees to reopen the Strait of Hormuz to international shipping. Iran stops supporting proxy attacks across the region. For the United States, the U.S. agrees to lift sanctions that have strangled Iran's economy for years. The U.S. releases billions of dollars in frozen Iranian funds. The U.S. halts military operations and ends the blockade. Both sides would declare an end to hostilities, followed by a 30-day window to negotiate a more detailed, permanent agreement. Now, is this a done deal? Absolutely not. Sources say the White House believes this is the closest both sides have been to an agreement since the war started. But Iranian leadership is divided. Hardliners inside the regime don't want to be seen surrendering to American pressure. Moderate voices want to stop the bleeding. And Secretary Rubio, while publicly optimistic, also called some of Iran's top leaders insane in the brain and openly questioned whether they'd actually sign anything. The U.S. expected Iran's response today, Friday, May 9th. That response hasn't come yet as I'm recording this. Every hour that passes without an answer increases the tension. So let's play this out. 2 scenarios. Scenario 1, Iran says yes. A deal gets signed, the Strait of Hormuz reopens, oil flows again. Gas prices start dropping within days as markets react. Iran gets sanctions relief and its frozen funds back. The war formally ends, at least the hot phase of it. But here's the catch. It wouldn't truly be over. The 30-day negotiation window begins, and that's where the real fight starts. Nuclear enrichment limits, verification mechanisms, regional proxy groups. These are incredibly complex issues that have derailed talks for decades. And Iran's hardliners could torpedo any deal from within. There's a real scenario where a ceasefire is signed and then collapses 3 weeks later. Scenario 2, Iran says no or doesn't respond. Trump has been explicit. The U.S. will resume bombing, and not at the same level, at a higher level. What does that mean practically? Potentially strikes on Iran's remaining naval infrastructure, possible targeting of oil production facilities, which would send global oil prices through the roof, escalation with Iran's proxy forces in Iraq, Syria, and Yemen, and the very real risk that a miscalculation in the Strait of Hormuz triggers full-scale naval combat. Rubio warned it clearly. If Iran had a nuclear weapon and closed the strait, gas prices could hit $8 or $9 a gallon, and America would have no leverage to stop it. That's the endgame the U.S. is trying to prevent. One more wild card. Trump heads to China next week. Beijing is Iran's most important economic partner, and China's economy desperately needs oil flowing through the strait again. Behind the scenes, Chinese pressure on Tehran could be a deciding factor in whether Iran says yes or no today. We are at a genuine inflection point, the kind of moment that historians write chapters about. A war that started with one of the most dramatic military strikes in modern history, The assassination of a supreme leader, the closing of the world's most important oil choke point, could either move toward an uneasy peace today or explode into something far worse. The people negotiating this deal are doing so knowing that millions of lives, trillions of dollars in global trade, and the stability of the entire Middle East hang in the balance. And Iran has until today to decide. I'll be updating you as soon as we get news on Iran's response, so make sure you're subscribed and have notifications turned on. This is going to move fast. If you found this breakdown useful, drop a comment below. Tell me, do you think Iran will take the deal? Or do you think this war has more chapters left? I'll see you in the next one.